Good morning, environmental damage gang. And just so you guys know, you guys are my test market for all kinds of things, including the frohawk. For those of you who don't know, that's a mohawk, but one where you have hair and it's still kind of fuzzy. So this is the frohawk. And I'm trying to fit in with the IG stackers at the show. So I'm thinking if I do this, maybe get like a tattoo of a spider right here, a teardrop on this side, and maybe like a maybe some lips right there. I think I'd fit in. I think it'd be just fine. Maybe I'm gonna try that. Okay, so anyways, if you can get past all that, I'm just having fun with y'all. Um, what is going on? So one of the things that I want to mention to you is that at least one dealer gave me very specific numbers about his prediction for gold and silver for the next year, and they were gold at 1,600 and silver. I think he said $14 or $15 an ounce. And this morning, as I opened up the old Kitco app, gold was 1697 and silver was 1778 on the downward decline, and I want to talk about actual market prices, market pressure, and where you end up at, and why I kind of think gold and silver may be kind of in a downward trend for a bit, and also why the coin market is still going to be pretty good for a while. And it's all about market pressures and who's finding what and scarcity. So I've been thinking about this. So I have a gun dealer friend who we were talking the other day, and the way you see the economy depends an awful lot on what your personal economic situation is, right? So if you're unemployed, the unemployment rate's 100%, right? So your view of the economy is very different if you're having a rough time, right? So but there are hundreds of sectors out there as far as business goes, right? And one of my favorite little business, what do we call this, collages, is the Wells Fargo. My Wells Fargo advisor guy gives me this printout, and it has, I think, about 18 to 20 sectors that it tracks and how they perform year over year. And it's this whole big spreadsheet, and so you can see, how the different sectors perform differently at different times, and it's kind of interesting to watch. So. If you watch Fox News or CNN, your view of the economy is going to be very different. So I try to take into account, of course, my own personal view of the economy, what's going on, but also looking around and seeing what's actually going on, right? So in a lot of this is the economy. I can't quite make heads or tails of what's going on certain things, but because but when I get data, it helps me understand, right? So people say the housing market's going to crash. I'm like, well, but at least is from what I can tell, you still have more demand than you have supply, right? And that is why I think the coin market is going to maintain where it's at, because as far as I can tell, especially when it comes to, let me call it like $500 and up type coins, there seems to be more demand than supply. There seems to be more hands looking for them than they are available. That's just my, you know, gut. That's all I'm using there is my gut, right? I don't have stats and data that actually back that up 100%. But what I will say is I'm going to compare gold and silver to guns right now, because so my gun dealer friend, he's been really, bummed about the fact that Glocks that he used to get $7.99 for are now $5.99, and his cost, of course, is like $5.70, right? Like he can make 20 bucks on a Glock. Um, and it's really interesting to see because uh, even with all the scare tactics, even with all the fear mongering, there are only so many people who are looking for a new gun or who need more guns, right? So guns are not food. Silver is not food. It's a different thing. I actually view guns sometimes almost like the same way I view silver, like a commodity in a savings account kind of thing. But when you look at silver or gold, there's only so much money that can go into it, right? There's only so many people who are like, okay, if I'm a new guy buying silver and I had 10 grand to spend and then I can spend a couple $100 a month, maybe I become a continuous buyer, maybe, but maybe I just have 10 grand to spend once, and then after that, because I'm an American, I've got $20 a month to spend, right? So, but there's a point at which you're actually not really adding any new real big buyers, and there's a point at which it's just kind of things are maintaining, and a point at which supply and demand kind of meet, right? So same thing in the car market right now, right? So you saw used cars for the first time ever go up in value. Ever. That's how bad of a purchase cars are, right? And but the reality is that that eventually was going to end, and now you're seeing prices come down, at least here in Arizona, both in the Tucson and Phoenix region. You're seeing prices come back down because eventually you have people who are looking. There's only so many people who are looking for a car. You have people who would have bought a new car that decided, no, I'll just wait. So they're dropping off. That demand level comes back down, and eventually these car lots that weren't getting new cars on them because of supply chain issues are getting new cars on them, right? So what is the supply chain issue, but what's the demand? And so for coins, you're seeing a combination, I think, of both of those. Of course, they're not making any more coins. The supply chain is kind of what it is, but the demand level, I think, still seems to be fairly consistent. So at least from my vantage point in my eyeballs, and after thinking about it, and after going to a show, shows can be misleading because I'll do business there and think everything's hunky dory. But I do try to ask around and see how people are doing, see how guys are pricing stuff. You can tell a lot about the economy for coins based on how guys are pricing stuff. Are guys looking to move things out, or are they paying well in excess of bid for really nice coins, or that type of thing? There's some consistency there when you look at those, as far as how the overall economy of the coin market is doing. All right, so that's that. I think I could see gold and silver come back down. Now I got to tell you a story about passing on a almost $350,000 deal. And then after that, we'll get on to just a few more things that I bought this week that are good, fun. I think are fun and interesting. So I had a guy call me, and he had 200 ounces of gold. Okay, this is how this works. He wanted spot. They were all kangaroos. He wanted spot. I said, well, let me see what I can do, because normally I wouldn't buy them at spot, because to flip them I got to have a little bit of margin. So for lots of different reasons, I ended up calling a guy that I know locally because of just the way the deal was going to have to work. And he said he could give me 15 bucks over. I was like, great. So for those of you who are quick with the math, that's like at the time $347,000 to make $3,000. That's 0.08%. But if it is a matter of just moving some things around and making $3,000, okay, well, I can make $3,000 a day. So the funny thing is, of course, on the back end, my guy's like, well, my buyer is like, well, as long as he doesn't get hit by a train, right? And then, so I think I have the deal lined up, and I'm going to meet this guy at the bank and take the merchandise, give him a receipt. And but then his lawyer and his wife were very upset that all he was getting was receipt. What happens if I get hit by a train, right? And I told him, I'm like, well, this is the same thing. I'm like, this is why I told you, I wanted him and his lawyer, I guess. He needed help. He's 85. But to bring the coins to the coin shop, that eliminates the risk for me of having a deal pending and then, confirming something and I don't have the coins. And it also eliminates the risk of me having the coins and something happening to me and him not getting paid, right? So, but it just became a hassle, because then he wanted to break it into like 20 and 40 and 50 ounce chunks, and he still wanted to do it his way, where I'd have to run to the bank and meet him there. And I'm not running to the bank to make $300 at a time on $50,000 transactions. Like, that's not worth my time, right? So, but that is the weird world that I live in. So I actually cut myself out of the deal and gave the deal to my guy who's local, who can meet him. And I don't have a follow-up yet. I don't know if he actually ended up buying the deal or not. The guy's there. He's on the up and up. It's fine, but it's like, there's a lot to think about when it goes into some of those things. But for me, because what you're talking about doing is having money transferred around in large amounts and making sure that the bank doesn't hold any funds, and all. It's just, there's a whole lot of little details that could go into it that could go sideways. So now that would have been mathematically just about the biggest deal I've done. It would have been the biggest deal I've done in one shot. Let me put it that way. I've done bullion deals with customers before that added up to that, but But yeah, 0.08%. Let's go. Now, but by the way, this is how big bullion guys work. You know, they're just moving money around all day long. And as long as you have the money to do it with, that 0.08% works for you. You know, because if you can make 0.08% on, you know, $1 million daily, well, there you go, right? And it's a wild, wild world. It's something that I actually don't live in a whole lot, and I'm sure none of you do. All right, so the coolest things. Well, I got to show you this stuff. I bought a collection of stuff that was all Civil War related, and the guy had there's an autograph book which I don't have with me right now, but the autograph book is really cool. It is all autographs from there was a POW camp that the Union had for Confederate officers up in Lake Erie called crap, I forgot, Johnson, yeah. But there's a Johnson Island, and there is a camp there, and so this is like an autograph book with over 100 autographs in it, and it'll have the guys, you know, in his own handwriting, his name, his division, and where he was captured at, and sometimes the capture date. And so it's a super cool item. I'm really excited. There's also some daguerreotypes and other types of tin type photos, a bunch of CDV cards, which are the little cardboard cards, carte de vistas from that time period. Those are in albums. And then there was also some stuff from the United Daughters of the Confederacy, right? So this is from 1931 on this one. And so you can piece stuff together a little bit, because there's a signature on the front. This one is from 1929. And then what's cool is there's a bunch of like little hand typed and handwritten letters in there. I'm assuming they're going to be from the 20s and 30s, and I'll get to that in a second. This one was wild. Atlantic City, Almas Temple Legion of Honor. So the reason I'm pointing this one out, you know, by the way, this is, I don't know what time of year this is, but you know, I'm just thinking there's got to be wool coats. When you live in Tucson, the idea of wool anything is just preposterous. But look at all the people up on the rooftop here. Like, you guys aren't really worried about falling, are you? Not at all. This is not dated on the back. But so the stuff that's all from the Confederacy, Daughters of the Confederacy, there's a bunch of papers in here. And a lot of these have either hand typed or handwritten things that I think they were for stories that were supposed to be told from the viewpoint of people who were either in the Civil War or their dad or relative was in the Civil War. So like this one, in 1862, my father Safford Bearwick enlisted in the Confederate Army, where he served till disabled. And then it goes on to, you know, talk about he was at Fort Sumter. You know, so to me, these things are really, really wild to just kind of read over. I might do something with these as far as like video content goes at one point, because I'm just really intrigued by them. They're really interesting to read. They're mostly pretty legible. But I think my favorite comment out of any of them, because this really blew me away. It took me a while to figure out that this says exactly what it says, because at first I thought it meant something different. He goes from talking about Stonewall Jackson, the most distinguished man he's ever seen. The next day, I was left at camp and given strict orders to send baggage and bury dead. The commanding officer was hated by many and was finally shot and killed by Jacob Finzi. Disease were going around, and I was taken to the hospital with measles. It's just one line in there. No, he's serious that one of his commanding officers got shot and killed by one of their own because no one liked him. Wow. Yeah. A couple more random items to show to you that were in this group of stuff. This is a World War I little pamphlet post World War I, but it had to do with the movements and counter movements. And this here is hand signed to somebody by the guy who made the pamphlet. And I thought this was pretty wild, you know, because it has the maps moving stuff around, and then it has a bunch of the descriptions of the different wars, different battles, skirmishes, if you will. I thought that was pretty neat. And for all y'all Army Navy guys, this I got to find out exactly what this is, but I loved the imagery on here. Look at that. Army Navy football game. This is November 27th, 1920, Hotel Astor. And so this was their dinner. I don't know if this was only for the higher ups, but then it has inside, you know, it mentions the menu, and then it has a list of the games, the history of the games going back to, was that 1890, the scores. By the way, the menu, pamplemousse fruité, okra à la créole. Why is everything in French? Like, if there's one language I can't speak, it's French, along with English. Anyways, they finished up with Oka. Here you go. But anyway, it's pretty wild. And then they have a little spot for you to fill in what happens 1920. But someone's going to love this thing. Maybe we'll put it on eBay. I got to see if I can figure out what it's worth. All right, guys. That's the week that was. Thanks for joining me. And let me know about the new hairdo. I'll talk to you later. Thanks.